Hello and welcome to MyFusion Helper. This is just a short video to show you how to use the Move It helper. Now, this is a very simplistic helper. It's not going to take a lot of explanation. It's quite straightforward and there's not a lot of options. But let's just dive in and I'll show you how it works first, and then afterwards we'll talk about some of the use cases and strategies for it. Okay, so now we come into the application and we select the helper. So we can type in move and it'll pull up Move It, and then we can type in here and give it a name. And this is really simple. I always encourage you to spend the 2 minutes that it takes, or 20 seconds in this case, that it takes to read the descriptions here. The Move It allows you to simply move data from one field to another. Select the From field and then select the field you'd wish it to go to. Okay, so real simple. Here's the From field. We'll pretend that this is sitting in a spouse name, that we've stuffed some data in there that isn't really the spouse name, and we want to move it on to a custom field here. And I'll just put in a test example field, and that was a scenario that we were trying to do. Now keep in mind, this truly is a move. So when the data goes from here to here, it's no longer going to be here anymore. So this in essence can save you a function call, because you don't have to copy the data and then use a field like set the data and then turn around and use another one to clear it, right? You can just move it and in one function accomplish both. So this, while not used tremendously frequently, this is a very useful little helper, and when you need it, it'll be exactly what you want it to do, trust me. So now let's go ahead and just create the helper. There's no other options to configure. It's very straightforward and simple, just a from and a to. That's all you have to worry about. All right, now you're going to get the link that we copy to paste into Infusionsoft, okay? And given that link, we can come into Infusionsoft, go into the campaign where you want to set this up, and let's say we've got a sequence in here, and we've already set up an HTTP post snippet. If you're not familiar with how to do that, you go into the process, and this is the guy here, and you just drag him onto the canvas. And I've already named it MyFusion Helper dash and then greater than Move It, which is just kind of my way of representing a function call. I find this to be an easy representation. Take the time to put notes here to change and rename things. It's a best practice. I see after auditing hundreds of Infusionsoft apps that very few people take the time to rename things, and it just makes it very difficult to try to read and understand what's going on later. So then we can come in here and we can just paste in the URL, and then we can set it to ready, and that is all there is to it. You don't need to worry about any of this data. You don't need to add or delete or do anything. Just don't mess with the name value pairs at all, and come back and you're all set. Okay, so we've taken a look at how to do it, and it's quite simple. And we've already kind of talked about some of the examples, and there really isn't much else to go into. It's really quite simple. You're just moving transitory data from one location to another without leaving anything behind, right? So any example that you can think of for that, that's what you'd be doing, right? It is something that is not used a whole lot because we can get to most of the fields and do what we need usually, but it is something that's still occasionally used. Now, moving data out of a field via a web form that is accessible to a web form but then not accessible outside of it is sometimes very useful as well. So sometimes you're doing something where you're putting data into fields that you can't get to from a web form with Infusionsoft, and so you need to stuff that data into a field like a spouse name field that's not used, and then move it from that field somewhere else where maybe you're working with it with the API or something to that extent. So those are some different examples of when you might use the Move It feature. The Move It helper is quite simple and quite elegant, so use it wherever you need.